the Persona 3 Iceberg. If you've ever played Persona 3 before, then I'm sure you're aware that it's got its fair share of hidden content, obscure spin-offs, and silly little trivia. In my Persona 3 retrospective, I covered various angles of the game, but didn't talk about every little thing that I wanted to, because the video is already 4 hours, give me a break. So that's what this iceberg is for. For those of you that don't know what an iceberg is, it's basically a way of talking about different topics, starting with surface level stuff that most people already know about, and then going progressively deeper into more obscure and speculative topics. Without any further ado, let's dive straight into the first layer of the iceberg. Did you know there was an anime film series based on Persona 3? The first one was released in 2013, with a second, third, and fourth releasing each subsequent year, and with each film set in a different season of the story's year. So it starts with Spring of Birth, then Midsummer Night's Dream, then Falling Down, and then finally Winter of Rebirth. The films were distributed by Aniplex, a huge anime production subsidiary of Sony, responsible for hits like Eureka 7, Full Metal Alchemist, and Buddy Daddies, which is like if Three Men and a Baby was an anime. It was produced by the same studio that made Tenchi Muyo, and subsequently has a similar art style, which I'm personally not a fan of. Everyone just has like squished wide faces. I can't exactly describe it, but I don't think it does the character's art design justice. A lot of the Japanese voice actors in the series pretty much established themselves as the default voice actors for these characters for years to come. Akira Ishida has literally been Makoto's Japanese voice actor ever since, even reprising his role for Reload. Same goes for Rai Tanaka as Mitsuru, Megumi Toyoguchi as Yukari, and several more. As a whole, the series does a good job at adapting the 50-plus hour story into about 6 hours or so. Unfortunately, that means a lot of the main characters' development is limited, and the social link characters basically just show up as cameos. But on the other hand, it does do certain characters justice, like the scene with Elizabeth absolutely busting the floor at the discotheque. Another scene that comes to mind is Shinjiro in his element, cooking and playing with Koromaru, and then being absolutely mortified when he realizes that Aigis is watching him. He's a tough guy, you see, and ought to be smoking a cigarette and flipping a coin while leaning against a lamppost or something. Scenes like these are ridiculous, but are able to bring fresh life to characterizations we had previously only seen as JPEGs with text boxes. If you can find these online, I'd recommend giving them a watch. They're pretty good. Pretty good. Apropos of nothing, it seems pretty clear that some of the cinematography from the films were used as inspiration for scenes in Reload. Let's take a look at a couple clips from October 4th. See, like, that moonshot is so specific, there's no way that wasn't an intentional homage. There's a lot of examples of this, but I just kind of found it interesting that the Reload team based certain cinematics on the films rather than the original game's anime cutscenes. In my Persona 3 retrospective, I pretty liberally called the protagonist Makoto, and while that is his canon name, that comes with a little asterisk. In the original P3, you get to input your own name, so there's no official default name for the character, but later on, Atlus commissioned a manga series based on P3, and for those, the artist named the protagonist Minato Arizato, because they had to call him something, right? So for years, the Persona fan community acknowledged our blue-haired emo boy as Minato. In 2013, Atlus released the first film in the 4-part series covering the events of the main story. This is when the protagonist was first officially called Makoto Yuki. It's debatable if a film adaptation is any more canon than a manga, but later games like Persona 3 Dancing would also call him Makoto, so as of now, that's his canon name. You ever wonder what those headphone-looking things on Aigis are? Well, I mean, they could be headphones. The game never explicitly says one way or the other, but did you know that their design is a reference to the Antikythera mechanism? Of course you didn't. Don't act like you knew that already. This device is the first known analog computer, first discovered in 1901 and dating back to 2nd century Greece. It was first used to keep track and predict the position of the solar system and eclipses, and to view pornography. Our boy Makoto is known to be a big audiophile. That's no secret. The first thing we see in the opening cutscene is him putting on the Persona 3 soundtrack. But did you know that those headphones that he carries around with him at all times are for realsies? They're the Audio-Technica ATH EMZ headphones. This model was pretty popular during P3's release, but sadly it's been discontinued. Speaking of discontinued headphones, that leads me to this video's sponsor, Beats by Dre. No, I'm kidding. It's Mecha Japan. We all know the soundtrack is the best part of Persona 3, and Mecha Japan's got it available for purchase. There's your segue, alright? They've also got plenty of other cool Persona 3 merch, like plushies of the SEAS team, this super detailed figure of Elizabeth and Thanatos, and there's also plenty of Persona 5 merch as well. Mecha Japan has all the good stuff from your favorite Japanese properties, like Nintendo, Sanrio, and Pokemon. I'm gonna get this Sudowoodo because he's my favorite, and where the heck else would you get something this niche? Nowhere. That's where. Mecha Japan. So go ahead, treat yourself to that Koromaru plushie, or the episode Igus soundtrack, or even this sexy panther figure. I'm not judging you, don't worry about it. Remember to use code WESONA10 at checkout for a discount. Thanks Mecha Japan for sponsoring this video, and now let's dive back into the iceberg. There are a lot of classic Broadway musicals. Les Mis, Wicked, that time they did a Spider-Man musical and everyone almost died. But for me, if I'm gonna get all dressed up and shill out a ton of money for a show, I wanna see something classy. I wanna see something highbrow. I wanna see something like the Weird Masquerade. So this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a musical of Persona 3 using music from Soji Meguro's OST and new songs from composer Meiko Kurabara. It was a series of plays that ran from about 2014 to 2017, with each play following a season of the year, much like the format of the anime films. Interestingly, there were two versions of each play, one featuring Makoto and one featuring Katone from Portable. The Katone plays had slightly different dialogue and alternate scenes and characters, such as Theodore replacing Elizabeth. Also, because a canon name hadn't been established for Makoto yet, he went by Sakuya Shiomi, and Katone was Katone Shiomi. I actually like the idea that Katone and Makoto were siblings, and one of them died on the Moonlight Bridge and the other survived, depending on which route you play in Portable. That was originally a fan conspiracy theory, but these plays pretty much made it reality. The translation to live action is hit or miss as far as the casting goes. Ken, Fuka, and Mitsuru actually look pretty good. Junpei just looks really tired. Yukari looks way too old to play the part, and Makoto looks like when a boy band from the 90s does a reunion show, and it's like, ew, gross, they're old now. Get out of here, aging actors. Bring in some young people. I want cool young people. Because the game obviously heavily features fantasy visuals, the Weird Masquerade had to get creative with translating that to a stage show. And by that, I mean all the characters fight a projector screen. I mean, I don't know how else you would visualize fighting a giant enemy like Nyx, but this just looks like they're doing Taibo or something. Tatsumi Port Island is the main location of the game, and although never officially confirmed, it seems to be based on Port Island near Kobe, Japan. It may have also been inspired by Odaiba. Odaiba is a man-made island and tourist hotspot in Japan. They even have their own Statue of Liberty. Suddenly ours doesn't feel quite so special. I mean, I thought this was a special gift to us, you know? I didn't think the French were just giving these things away. Port Island Station was based on the real-life location Trident Square on Harumi Island. Paulownia Mall was designed after Venus Fort, a shopping complex in Odaiba. Also, in case you're curious, Paulownia Mall is named after the tree of the same name, also called the Empress Tree. I think this is only briefly mentioned in the game, but that's it. Iwatodai Station is modeled after the Yurikamomi monorail stop at Shinbashi Station. They got these details down pretty good. To add some authenticity, the developers even covered all the walls with these posters and flyers to make the world feel more real. One of these flyers even features artwork of the initial design of the protagonist, though he's pretty hard to make out since he's pixelated as all get out. Next to the Iwatodai strip mall, there's this vacant lot. According to the Persona 3 club book, it tied into a scrapped event. There was going to be a lottery booth, and the top prize was 300 million yen, which is about 2 million American dollars. The protagonist would use that money to buy the lot and presumably build a house or something for himself. But that's about as far as that idea went before it got cancelled. So this really wasn't elaborated at all in the game, but the tower where Ikutsu tries to sacrifice the party, that's the observatory building near the school. Ikutsu had it constructed on school grounds under the pretense of it being for Gekkoukan students to use, like for an astronomy class or whatever, but of course that was a lie. Apparently the building's entire purpose was for this ritual. Maybe the idea being that it had to be done up high on a tall building so Nyx could see it or something? I don't know. Gekkoukan High itself wasn't designed after one particular place, but in keeping with the Greek themes of the game, what with being able to summon Greek gods as personas and whatnot, a few Greek elements were added to the school's design, like these Greek-style columns. The Iwatodai student dorms, weirdly enough, were modeled after this apartment complex, which was the main setting in the 1987 film Batteries Not Included. Apparently, the lead designer for P3, Shigenori Sojima, saw this film once and it stuck in his mind, and he tried designing the Iwatodai dorms off his memory of the movie. Trinity Soul was a short-lived anime series that's a loose spin-off of Persona 3, taking place in the same universe but being set 10 years later and starring a completely new cast of characters. It takes place in 2020 and stars three brothers, Shin, Jun, and Ryo, as they try to figure out what's causing a dangerous epidemic that's spreading across Japan. You heard it here first, folks. Persona predicted COVID more than a decade before it happened. Congratulations, Persona. So I mentioned this is a loose spin-off, and by that I mean there's actually only two characters from the game that make an appearance here. Igor, which seems appropriate since he's this quasi-dimensional being, and Akihiko. One of the three protagonist brothers is a cop, and Akihiko volunteers his efforts helping the police with Persona-related incidents, which tracks considering his role in P3 and his connection with Officer Kurosawa. Unfortunately, Akihiko can't summon his Persona anymore, because he, quote, got too old. This seems to be a canon thing in the Personaverse, and yet I don't think I've ever found a source in the game itself that explains why adults can't use Personas, but who knows? Maybe Akihiko could have his hook moment, if only he just believes hard enough, and starts wearing eyeliner. Shigenori Sojima actually designed some of the character artwork for the series, and it shows. The art and visuals look really good, and the show even opens with a theme song from the band Flow. I love those guys. So if you can find it somewhere, maybe check out Trinity Soul. If you're looking for some closure on P3's story, you probably won't find it here, but if you're a diehard fan, it may be worth your time. For those unfamiliar, drama CDs are like radio plays, where voice actors from a property like a video game or an anime come back to the studio to read lines for additional stories or skits. Basically, it's only the sort of thing diehard fans would be interested in, and it's usually just slice-of-life kind of stories, although occasionally there's some lore dumps thrown in. For Persona 3, a number of drama CDs were made with the original Japanese voice cast. This CD has a shirtless Mitsuru on the cover, for some reason. Kind of an egregious tease, especially considering this is an audio medium, but Gooner's gonna goon, am I right? I wonder if I could find this on eBay. I can't speak in great detail about the quality of these since they were all Japanese exclusive, but I've read the story summaries and it's pretty much just goofy slice-of-life stuff. One features Junpei trying to get his hands on a Jack Frost doll, another has the gang preparing for the school's cultural festival. You know, low-stakes stories. Some of these CDs are considered canon, and by extension, original characters made for the drama CDs are canon too. Like Mitsuru's maid, Kakuno, will later appear in the Persona anime movie, and even in Persona 4 Ultimax. Labris, who's a major character from Persona 4 Arena, was written from one of these drama CDs, and is how they were first introduced into the series. Another cool thing these drama CDs did was give voices to Social Link characters who in the original game weren't voiced at all. So President Tanaka, Kenji, Bebe, etc. are all voiced for the first time here. In fact, some of the voice actors like Chihiro's, for example, would go on to voice the character in the anime films and other spin-offs. If you want to listen to these stories, a couple of Persona fan goats have translated them and even provided artwork for your viewing pleasure. So, enjoy. And if you ever find out what the context is for that shirtless Mitsuru, let me know. Asking for a friend. This wouldn't be a good Iceberg without a ton of spoilers, so here's your chance to get out now while the get-in's good. Okay, you ready? Bruce Willis was John McClane the whole time. I know, I never would have seen it coming. Also, Pharos is death. Pharos is the first character you properly meet in the game, though it takes some time before he introduces himself and much longer before you realize that he's the personification of death, trapped inside Makoto's soul by Igus, because that's a thing robots have the ability to do, apparently. There's some subtle foreshadowing, like the fact that his major arcana is death. Okay, maybe that's not so subtle. But one other interesting bit of symbolic foreshadowing is the way he's dressed. Pharos is wearing black and white striped clothes, which clearly is supposed to resemble a prisoner's outfit. This is because Pharos is literally a prisoner within Makoto's psyche, and it's not until the 12 major arcana shadows are defeated that he's finally able to leave and become that huge dork Ryoji. If you want to see me roast Ryoji some more, watch my Persona 3 retrospective. Man, I hate that guy. Each member of SEES has their own persona and it's fixed throughout the game. Eventually, their personas do evolve into more powerful forms, but they still remain symbolically relevant to each character. Yukari's persona is Io, and the design is that of a woman chained to a giant cow's head. This comes directly from Greek mythology. Zeus is married to Hera, but he's smitten with their priestess Io. Zeus cheats on his wife with Io, and to hide her identity, Zeus transforms her into a cow. Hera sees through the ruse and imprisons Io in her cow form. Soon after, Zeus secretly frees her, and Io flees to Egypt to avoid Hera's wrath. This may seem like a really weird one, but it ties directly into Yukari's backstory. Her father, working for the Kirijo group, managed to thwart their attempts at summoning Nyx, and it cost him his life. His daughter was left alone, and the Takiba name became tainted after the Kirijo group pinned the blame on him. It's not a one-for-one comparison, obviously, but the themes of Yukari losing the person closest to her and having to start a new life somewhere else, while her past tries to haunt her, does bear some similarities to Io's story. Eventually, Io will transform into Isis, an even stronger version of the Taliban. I'm kidding. The Io in Greek mythology, after fleeing to Egypt, becomes the powerful magician Isis. After her new husband Osiris is murdered and his body parts are scattered around Egypt, Isis goes on a quest to collect all the parts and reassemble him. This also parallels Yukari's desire to resurrect Makoto in the epilogue. Junpei's persona is also based on Greek mythology. Hermes was the god of travel and athletics, which fits with Junpei's desire to be a professional baseball player. He's also an errand boy for a lot of people in mythology, and that kinda fits Junpei's personality as well. Hermes' main goal is to help travelers along their way, and to help the dead find their way to Hades. Junpei is a good friend to everyone, and is the first person to willingly befriend Makoto. Hermes eventually evolves into Trismegistus, a Greek-Egyptian hybrid figure that is the father of magic, which fits with Junpei's magician arcana. Triple Midget is considered to be a fountain of wisdom, so it's symbolic, I think, of Junpei learning that there's a lot more to him than we initially thought at the start of the game. Mitsuru's persona is Penthesilea, an Amazonian queen who is the daughter of Ares, god of war, and Otrera, founder of the Amazons. Penthesilea, like Mitsuru, is beautiful, a fierce warrior, and comes from a lineage of powerful figures. The clearest symbolism here is the fact that her father is the god of war, and the Kirijo family being responsible for unleashing the shadows onto the world. Before Fuka, Mitsuru was the party's navigator. Penthesilea, being an Amazonian huntress, would have been good at navigating too. Her persona evolves into Artemisea, a queen and naval commander during the Persian Wars. She was known for her bravery and strategic mind, so, you know, Mitsuru. Akihiko and Shinjiro's personas are the Gemini twins, Polydeuces, or Pollux, and Castor, respectively. Pollux and Castor, like everyone else so far, comes from Greek mythology. They were hero twins that would go on epic adventures together. In a battle, Castor is dealt a fatal wound. Despite being twins, they have two different parents. Pollux was the son of Zeus, and thus immortal, and Castor was not. Pollux decides to share his immortality with his brother, which means that they have to alternate between living on Mount Olympus and living in Hades. The story, of course, represents the brother-like bond Akihiko and Shinjiro had, and how Shinjiro, unfortunately, had the ill fate of being mortal. Still, Akihiko carries his brother's memory with him, keeping him alive in a sense. Castor's Theurgy actually spoils Shinji's fate. He's stabbed in the chest with a spear, which is how the mythological Castor received his fatal wound. To take this metaphor a stage further, the spear user of the group, Ken, is ultimately responsible for Shinjiro's death. I mean, Takaya is too, but I don't think there was a Greek god with a Glock. Polydeuces will evolve into Caesar, named most likely after Augustus Caesar, the ruler of the Roman Empire. Akihiko shared a lot of the leadership, determination, and strength that Caesar had, as well as his ability to inspire and guide others. Lucia is the persona for Fuka, and she represents the Christian figure Saint Lucy, patron saint of the blind. She devoted her life to God and vowed celibacy. Her father tried having her married off, and when she refused to give up her chastity, her betrothed had her eyes gouged out. Miraculously, she was still able to see through the power of God. Likewise, the persona Lucia is able to guide the party as a navigator despite being blind. Her innocence and commitment to non-violence perfectly matches with Fuka's personality. Lucia eventually evolves into Juno, goddess of marriage, family, and childbirth. Considering her motherly role in keeping the Seas family together and guiding them on missions, it seems fitting. Ken's persona is Nemesis, the Greek god of divine justice and retribution. Honestly, probably should have seen this plot twist with Shinjiro coming from a mile away. Nemesis, by the way, is the brother of Thanatos and son of Nyx. I think his wheel design is supposed to represent the never-ending cycle of revenge, but that's just my take. Nemesis will eventually evolve into Kali Nemi, a Hindu figure that literally means Wheel of Time, and represents death and rebirth. This one's a little more vague, but I think the comparison is simply that Ken had to evolve from the Wheel of Revenge to the Wheel of Rebirth, starting a new life for himself after his mom and Shinji's passing. Koromaru's persona, to no one's surprise, is Cerberus, the most famous dog in Greek mythology, second only to Air Bud. There ain't no rules saying a dog can't play basketball. Cerberus is well known for being an enemy to both Sora and Harry Potter, but his actual role in mythology is to guard the gates of Hades. There's really not much to this comparison other than the fact that both Cerberus and Koromaru are both loyal dogs, diligently protecting something. Koromaru, besides Shinji and Metis, is the only party member whose persona doesn't evolve into another form. This may symbolize how Koromaru is a steadfast and unchanging friend throughout the game. In fact, his character arc is pretty much already complete by the time you meet him. We just learn about it retroactively. So we could assume that Cerberus is already his ultimate form. Or maybe the writers just didn't think there were enough mythical dog archetypes to draw inspiration from. I mean, come on guys, you could have made Cerberus evolve into Clifford the Big Red Dog. Imagine using a Theurgy where Clifford comes out and just stomps the shit out of your enemies. That would be sick. Palladion is Aegis's persona, and the term refers to a wooden statue of the goddess Athena, which the residents of Troy believed would keep the city safe. And the word Palladion has since symbolized any material object that has the power to protect a city. Considering Aegis comes into the story with the sole intention of keeping Makoto safe, her role as a guardian makes Palladion an appropriate choice for her persona. Palladion eventually evolves into Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war and handicraft. As Aegis spends time with the Seas team throughout the story, she learns more and more about what it means to be human, and thus the wooden statue of Athena transforming into the real Athena, much like Aegis becoming less like a caricature of a human and more like a real one. Interestingly, the mythical Athena was born from Zeus's forehead, so like Aegis, she too was artificially created. Metis is another unusual one. Her persona is Psyche, and she doesn't evolve into anything. The mythological Psyche was born human, but after marrying Cupid, became a goddess. She represents someone gaining a soul. In an alternate telling of Athena's birth, Metis is Athena's mom, who is swallowed up by Zeus. Because if it isn't clear by now, Zeus is a crazy bastard. P3's Metis was born from the emotions Aegis discarded after Makoto's death. Metis, or the soul of Aigis, is discarded in the same way that the mythological Metis is buried away by Zeus. And lastly, Makoto's persona is Orpheus, the legendary Greek musician and poet. While our protagonist doesn't ever play an instrument, he is of course fond of music, considering his headphones he carries around everywhere. Orpheus travels to Hades to rescue his deceased wife, Eurydice, and similarly, Makoto spends the game traveling through Tartarus to save the world. Orpheus rescues his wife, but tragically, she's snatched back to Hades when they were just about to reach the surface. Likewise, after the final battle, Makoto hangs on as long as he can, only to die right before he could be reunited with the rest of his friends once they regain their memories. Orpheus will eventually evolve into Orpheus Telos. Telos is a term that Aristotle used to refer to something's purpose or end goal. So in this context, it simply means Orpheus's final form.
Never felt like
Cheater, freaking pumpkin eater. If you grew up in the 90s or early 2000s, then this device probably looks familiar. It's called a Game Shark, and your kids are doing it under your roof. In the original Persona, if you use a cheat code device like a Game Shark or Action Replay, whether it's to modify your HP or give yourself some more money, it'll trigger a code that flags you as a dirty, stinking cheater. And the two people whose opinions you ought to value the most will, of course, be the ones to call you out.
Cheating, huh? I'm disappointed in you.
I can't believe you cheated. You're cheating. I'll have to punish you.
Oh no, Metsuru, please don't punish me. The Plume of Dusk is an item you could receive if you're playing easy mode, and if you didn't play easy mode, good luck trying to get any sense of what this thing is, because the story does not do a good job explaining it at all. Mechanically, it's an item that will revive your entire party and fully restore everyone's HP and SP. In easy mode, you'll get 10 of these right at the start of the game, and if you actually end up needing to use all of them, then wow, maybe video games aren't for you. I mean, Persona 3 is not even that hard. Are you sure you wouldn't rather be watching footballs or something? Lore-wise, these things are fragments of Nyx when her body merged with the moon. They're like remnants of her, and thus they're very powerful and exist as these trans-dimensional objects that could manipulate space and time. Mitsuru's motorcycle apparently had a Plume of Dusk in it to allow it to function during the dark hour. And the party's evokers also have Plumes of Dusk, and that's specifically what allows them to summon personas. Which makes sense. The collective unconscious stemmed from Nyx, so the ability to tap into it would require using Nyx's power. Also, Aigis' heart is made with a Plume of Dusk, and that's what allows her to summon a persona. I think there may have been one reference in the story to these items. It's when the Kirijo group's history is being explained, and they say that the group found a Plume of Dusk, and that led them to learning about Nyx. But beyond that, there's no explanation for what a Plume of Dusk is. So all this info came from the Persona 3 club book. Personally, I'm not a fan of when games make you do homework on a topic because they can't bother to explain it in the game itself. But whatever. Persona 3 Portable made a lot of controversial design and mechanic choices, but one thing that was definitely an improvement was the additional conversations and scenarios you get with the party members that flesh the characters out even more. In the original game, you could romance, as a social link, any of the female SEAS members, but with the addition of the female protagonist, the boys suddenly become romantic possibilities. Looks like boys are back on the menu, meets. That means you'll get a brand new social link conversation for Akihiko, Shinjiro, and even Ken.
Could you have a seat over in that chair, please?
Not advocating for that, just pointing out that it's there. In fairness, the dialogue seems to go out of its way to not explicitly state that there's any romantic feelings, even calling Ken a dear friend instead of a loved one, so that's something. If you manage to max out a relationship with any of your dorm mates, you'll unlock a secret ending, but only in New Game Plus mode. At the very end of the game, when Aigis is talking to Makoto, whoever you wooed on a second playthrough will make it to the roof before everyone else, and you'll get one last scene with them. It's a pretty bittersweet way to end your relationship. I mean, your lover suddenly remembers everything and reunites with you just to watch you die in your sleep. What a freaking bummer. These scenes are really short and probably aren't worth a replay of the entire game, but it's still cool that they included them. You may have noticed that Junpei is not a romantic option, and that makes sense since he's dedicated to Chidori. But apparently, he was originally considered as an option, and an entire scene was written and programmed into the game, only to have been scrapped before the game's launch. But modders were able to find this conversation in the game's source code. Shinjiro was one of my favorite characters in Persona 3, and certainly my favorite character to use in battle. His moves were just so overpowered, surely there must be a catch, right? Unfortunately, there was a catch, and it was way worse than I thought it was gonna be. What the hell, a bullet kills him? I just saw Hulk Hogan's shadow giving him the running leg drop, but a bullet is what does him in, really? Shinji's death is a catalyst for several characters' growth. It leads to Ken giving up his desire for revenge and helps him move past his mother's death. It helps Akihiko realize some things are out of his control, and helps him recontextualize his obsession with becoming stronger since his sister died. And it further villainizes Takaya, who, up till that point, came off as sort of a passive antagonist. But hey, screw all that symbolic crap, I just want my heavy hitter back in the party. So let's use some devil voodoo magic or whatever to bring him back. What's the big deal? So unfortunately, there's no option to do this in the original or reload versions of the game. Not without mods, at least. You could also use mods to turn Koromaru into a duffel bag. See, humanity can come together to create something good once in a while, but in Persona 3 Portable, if you choose the female route, Shinji will get his own dedicated social link, and you'll have to level it up to rank 10 before he dies. In the last social link, Shinji loses his pocket watch, and Katone will have to find it and give it back to him. I think you all know where this is going. Before Takaya can shoot him, Shinjiro reaches for his pocket watch and tosses it at Takaya's head, killing him instantly. Okay, not really, but the alternative is just as stupid and way more cliché. The pocket watch stops Takaya's bullet, and he instead goes into a coma for the remainder of the game. If you do all of this in New Game Plus, you'll get your final romantic social link with Shinji. So first he goes into a coma, misses everything with Nyx, wakes up just in time to see the female protagonist die on the roof. Then he inevitably dies later on due to the Persona suppressants he'd been taking. That's some real Romeo and Juliet shit. Chidori is the third member of Strega and is probably shouldering the entire weight of Hot Topic's financial viability. She engages in some summer lovin' with Junpei, and unfortunately for them both, the relationship ends in the worst way a relationship can. It's a tragic end, but beautifully, her persona fuses with his to create a new one, so in that way, she continues to live on through Junpei. But good news for Chidori shippers, in enhanced versions of the game, meaning every version besides the original, Chidori doesn't die. She's alive! I know, Adam Scott, what wondrous news. In Fez, you simply need to talk to Junpei to activate some unique conversations during certain days leading up to her death, but in Reload, it's a little more complicated. You have to talk to Junpei on a particular day in November, go buy white flowers, and then give them to Junpei to give to her. If you do that, a few months later, there will be a scene where Chidori wakes up in the hospital. Supposedly, the flowers soaked up some of her life force before she died, and when they're placed on her dead body later, it seeps back into her. So she wakes up, but she has amnesia and can't remember anything of the previous year, including meeting Junpei. He's not too bummed though, he's just happy she's alive. It's a nice ending that doesn't totally destroy the catalyst for the character's growth, quite like Shinji's revival did. It is a little weird that now Junpei has two personas and she has none. No takesies backsies, I guess. What's also kind of a bummer is the knowledge that Chidori, like the other suppressant users, have a shortened life expectancy, and that she's just gonna die anyways. Of course, we don't actually know how short is, but in Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, there's a scene where Junpei is dreaming about proposing to Chidori, and he's wearing a necklace that she gave him as a gift, so that seems to imply that not only is she still alive, but they managed to restart their relationship from the ground up. Which is pretty cool. Imagine getting to relive your first love all over again from the beginning. If it were me, I'd do a lot more lying the second time around. The early 2000s were an interesting time because internet technology was rapidly advancing and society wasn't quite acclimated to it yet. As such, there's a ton of early internet stuff that wasn't backed up correctly, or was never preserved at all. Nowadays, I think people take game preservation a lot more seriously, but back in the day, publishers would be like, "Oh, is this mobile game not doing well? Delete it forever." But sir, you heard me, delete it forever! Incidentally, I feel like this is also why it's so hard to find clips from early 2000s TV shows. Like, I loved The Colbert Report and old episodes of The Daily Show. Nowadays, people are reposting clips ad nauseum on YouTube and TikTok, but those old, full episodes are probably lost to time forever. And such is the fate of the several Persona 3 spin-off games. I want to let you know that I genuinely worked as hard as I could and wasted a shameful amount of time trying to dig up these games with limited to no success. So when I say they're gone, I mean they're really gone. Except for one. But I'll get to that in due time. First, let's talk about the duds, the ones we'll never get to see again. Persona 3 EM, pronounced Emu for some reason, was a mobile game released in 2007, and it's a side story that takes place during the Yakushima section of the game. While on vacation, the group stumbles upon the Nightmare Hour, which is basically just the Dark Hour, and they explore Oneros, which is basically just Tartarus. In Greek mythology, Oneros is the personification of dreams, so if it wasn't clear by now, the central theme here is dreams and nightmares. Incidentally, Oneros is the son of Nyx, who we're all pretty well acquainted with by now. The party accesses Oneros through this big ol' tree hole, and the dungeon itself is modeled after Tartarus, but only has 80 floors, which still seems like a lot for a mobile game. Each floor ends with an arch-boss, an evil inverse version of each of the party members' personas. So there's Arch Orpheus, Arch Penthesilea, etc., etc. They represent each respective persona user's insecurities, and the party needs to confront them in order to wake up. Unlike Tartarus in the Dark Hour, none of the characters remember their adventures once they wake up, as they chalk it up to just a big dream. This actually is an RPG, and gameplay-wise, resembles the source material better than any of the other games on this list. Weirdly, for a game with a fair amount of details chronicled about it, I could not find one single solitary video from this game, which makes me wonder how anyone knew about it at all. From what I've read about Emu though, it looked pretty cool, and this is probably the game I'm most bummed that I'll never get to play. C'est la vie. So, from the early 2000s to as late as 2013, Atlus had a subscription service called Megaten-A, where you could download Shin Megami Tensei and Persona-related content, like wallpapers and games, for your flip phone. Because, basically, none of this was preserved, and most of it is lost forever, so for this entry, we'll have to consult the wiki. Megami Chaining Soul was basically just Bejeweled, but with a Persona 3 theme, where you need to eliminate similar colored orbs, and occasionally a persona will appear to help you knock out more orbs at a time. Considering this game didn't really have a story or anything, and it was just a P3 skin of an existing game, I think I'll be able to sleep tonight knowing that it's gone forever, but it's still a shame that it's gone. A minor shame, but a shame. Broken Shadow was also released on the Megaten-A service, and like Chaining Soul, it was also just a P3 skin of an existing game. In this case, it was Atari's Breakout. You know, it's the one where you have to paddle and you have to knock out the blocks with the ball. You know the one. Except instead of blocks, it's shadows, because Persona. Persona 3 Escape. Another Megaten-A game, this one actually is story relevant, as it takes place during the Love Hotel section of the main game. Basically, it takes that vague period of time where Makoto and Yukari pass out and turns it into an entire escape room type game, where you have to collect items and solve puzzles to make it back to your party. So basically you're stuck in a sex hotel with a beautiful girl. Oh, the horrors. Get my ass out of there. Persona 3 A Lust Puzzle. It's a puzzle game with some images of Makoto slapped in there. I don't think we're missing much here. Megami Tensei Quicks Persona 3. Puzzle game with a P3 skin. I can only repeat this so many times. Persona 3 The Night Before. So this one isn't actually a mobile game, but I'm gonna include it anyways. The Night Before was a web-based flash game where the players tried to ascend Tartarus, fighting shadows along the way. There's not really a story here, but there are a few unique things. The game starts with a personality quiz, and you'll get a starting persona based on your answers. The game also only lets you play for 1 hour a day, I guess to be reminiscent of the Dark Hour. Persona 3 Social was an interesting one. It was an MMO of sorts, with the players being students at Gekkoukan High. There would be weekly quests, shadow battles, and other stuff you'd expect from this sort of a game, It came out in 2010, so this may be the only smartphone game on the list. Shockingly though, I could not find any footage of Social at all, despite the fact that by 2010, game preservation was being taken a little more seriously. I mean, it didn't have a very long run, the server shut down after like a year, but still, you'd think there would be some footage of it somewhere. I mean, the game's got 1 million downloads, but nobody took a video of it? Interestingly, Shigenori Sojima was hired to do new artwork for this game, although all I could find were these profiles of the default male and female protagonists. Social was made by Mobage. They did a bunch of mobile games in the late 2000s. I think they were bought out partially by Yahoo, and then both companies basically went under. If you try to access the game on the Yahoo Mobage site, it simply says, Persona 3 Social is over.
Shell art is over!
Okay, are you ready for some good news? There is one formerly lost Persona 3 game that is now playable. Released in 2007 for mobile devices, Igus the First Mission stars everyone's favorite clitoral-necked android, Igus, during the first year of her creation and subsequent living. It was released by a company called BBMF, which then ceased to exist, and so this game was considered lost for over a decade. But then Gmode, a company that specializes in old Java games, and presumably the company that BBMF originally worked with to get this thing distributed to mobile, decided to repackage this game along with several others and port them to Steam, and that's where I found this. Unfortunately for us, it was never localized, so it's completely in Japanese. Like Social, this title had its art design approved by Shigenori Sojima, so I think that makes the game's story canon. So as far as the actual story goes, it takes place on Yakushima Island in 1999, so 10 years before the main game, and right before the fall of Mitsuru's grandfather's legacy. As Igus, you go through a bunch of trials, testing out your anti-shadow capabilities. This isn't an RPG, of course, because it's a flip phone game, but an action platformer, where you could run, jump, shoot, and summon Palladian as a special attack. The main scientist in charge of Igus is named Yu, and she helps the android develop a desire to live a richer life beyond just her core objective. By the end of the story, Yu helps Igus discover what happiness means, and hey, it's not terrible for a game that could be finished in an hour. So that concludes the Persona 3 Iceberg. Do you have any interesting Persona 3 facts or trivia that I left out, and do you think I should have included it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Buy the shirt at wesdoesgames.shop. Make sure to visit Mecha Japan, and have a great day.